Hey, hi everyone. This is Lou Adler. We are going LinkedIn Live right now with Josh Burson, although I can't find Josh Burson, so we'll have to have someone substitute for him. Josh will be here. He told me yesterday that he will be here. I just sent him a text. Irrespective of that, we are going to have an event. I'll just play two parts. Part A is maybe three parts. One will be what I experienced 30 years ago about hiring and hiring diverse talent in the 90s. One will be hiring diverse talent today. That'll be me two times, the younger version and the older version. And then I'll ask a question to Josh Burson. And somebody just arrived. Maybe that's Josh. Let's see, it is. We got Josh here. He's allowed to talk. And I'm going to promote Josh to a panelist. Josh, you there? Your phone is still mute. I was going to tell everybody I was going to ask you a question.
I'm here.
Good. Hi, Josh. How you doing?
Good.
You might want to put your camera on, but you don't need to. But the only cameras that will be seen are, and if you haven't shaved or something.
It says the host has stopped it, so I think I need to.
Okay, I can do that. I think I have a capability to do that. So make a co-host. No, that's the wrong person. You kept on. Sorry. You can't. Oh, yes. I do want to make you a co-host. You should be a co-host now, Josh.
Okay, let's see. All right, I'm on.
Hey, there you are. Hey, how you doing? Hey, Brian, can you put your camera on just for a second? I just want to we are LinkedIn Live right now. But Brian, could you have played Josh for if we actually tried? I mean, maybe mush your hair up and take your glasses off.
I can't start my video because I'm not able to do that. So no, nobody can play Josh, Lou.
Okay, well, I agree with that. That's absolutely true. So nobody can. So, hey, welcome everybody on LinkedIn Live. I'm actually doing that as a stall a little bit, only because we have a 30-second delay on LinkedIn Live. So I had to get you people to start saying you're listening. Brian, do you see us on LinkedIn Live?
It does not say live yet, but I'm working on it.
No, that doesn't. Yeah, I don't think it's working. It says it's online.
I haven't been able to figure out how to use it myself. But if you guys,
actually, we did it once, and it doesn't seem to want to go right now. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to try again.
Okay. There was another platform that.
You know what I did? I have to keep the browser going until it makes the connection. Now it's going. I see it. And when I see my email, and I'm looking at a different screen than you guys are. This LinkedIn, I'm having a problem on this browser today. That might be what it is. That might be what it is.
Lou, you are live now.
Okay, good. Thank you, Brian. See my email, and I'm looking at a different screen than you guys. Okay, I see Josh there. I see Lou there. Brian, do you see me on LinkedIn? You can say no, Brian. You've muted yourself, Brian. So.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I see
okay.
you.
Hey, hi, everyone. We're now LinkedIn Live. I apologize for being a few minutes late, but the technology at certain times of the year is more effective than others. This is Lou Adler. I am delighted to have Josh Burson with me today on my weekly, almost daily recruiting show, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what we do it. Josh is probably one of the, I won't even say one of the, he is the most outstanding researcher in the HR space. Clearly preeminent, number one, knows everything inside out about hiring technology.
You're overdoing it here, Lou.
This is the setup, Josh, because I'm giving you a tough question. So this was not, you might have thought it was a great pat in the back. It wasn't a great pat in the back. It was, I'm going to ask you a question in a moment here, and I want to make sure we have people responding. Have you seen any comments coming in yet, Brian, from the LinkedIn Live session? I know you don't need to leave your microphone on mute, Brian, because you're going to be talking. Both of you are. So I don't
Thumbs
see
up.
any yet.
Thumbs up, but no comments, Lou.
Okay.
Okay. But you
Any
do see it
questions
on
are
LinkedIn
fine.
Live, right?
I can't find the LinkedIn Live, but whatever comes in, we'll just deal with them.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I can see them. I got the irrespective of that. I got it. So, and then we're recording this irrespective, so we'll get it out again. So, but Josh is a really remarkable researcher, understands this space. My background is at the micro level of doing hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of searches, and seeing it from a candidate and a hiring manager perspective. So I have a very micro view, but you start doing it hundreds of times, you start seeing some trends. So many years ago, I wrote a book. My first real book was in 1997, and technology was just ramping up. ATSs were being built, job boards were coming into their own, companies were building in-house recruiting teams. And at that time, McKinsey had a study say the war for talent is going to be won with all of this technology. I did not believe that it's 25 years ago, but I had this cartoon drawn 22 years ago, Josh. And it was just what I called the state of the technology market. I didn't draw it. I had a cartoonist say, hey, we put a bucket with a lot of holes in it and money spent for advertising. Cumbersome websites, boring jobs, long application process, recruiters who didn't understand the job or understand how to recognize top tier talent, hiring managers who made biased judgments. They were poor interviewers, and the systems were architected poorly.
Mm-hmm.
What's changed, Josh? I mean, you've seen this. I mean,
Well,
do you think is that the way it was
funny.
22 years ago? And what do you think?
It's funny. It's an interesting part of HR or really business where technology has been introduced in every single step, from searching, assessing, interviewing, onboarding, trying to do more intelligent screening, in every different place. And the interesting thing is all of those technologies have grown and grown and grown and grown into this multi-billion-dollar industry. But the bottom line is it's still a business about human beings, and human beings are very complicated machines. No two are the same. And to me, the reason recruiting continues to be so challenging, I was just on in a call like this yesterday where Madeline Lorano, who's a good friend of mine, was just did some research that 2/3 of candidates still don't know what's going on in the jobs they're searching for. They get no information from the hiring organization. Is that there's two sides that are changing. Jobs keep changing. Who are we recruiting this person? What are we recruiting this person for? This job that we tried to write down in a description on a piece of paper that was kind of very clearly defined, maybe in the 1970s and the 1980s, these days it's not clear what the job is going to be in a lot of cases, unless it's a very manual routine job, because the routine nature of jobs has become more and more automated. So we need to look for people that maybe had skills or experiences that look like they're relevant to this, but they also have cultural attributes that are relevant to our company. And they have to be willing to to do the commute, location, pay, other issues that we have around that. And then on the candidate side, we have this constant change in the nature of the economy. During a very peak period of the economy, like what we just came out of, people are very picky. During a very poor time of the economy, like we're now, people are a lot less picky. So it's a really complicated problem. So I don't think it's become automated. The automation is being used, but humans are still directly involved in a huge way. In fact, I remember one of the interviews I did years ago was the head of recruiting at one of the oil services companies. And he said, we analyzed every single factor on our high performing candidates, what schools they went to, what experiences they had, their IO psychology assessments, their intelligence, their technical assessments, their interview skills. And he said, and we couldn't find correlations of almost any of those things with the highest performing people, but we did find an enormously high correlation between successful candidates and the recruiter, the human recruiter, which I never forgot that story, that human recruiting is still maybe the center of this, regardless of how much technology
How long ago was that, Josh, when you came up with that?
It was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
It was Halliburton, I think. I can't remember if it was Halliburton or another company,
Yeah.
but but I think that's still true to a large degree, that these are, unless you have a job that is so routine that any human being with the skills can do it, and
Yeah, that's an
I've
interesting
never seen
point.
a
Let me
job
kind of
like
go
that.
through a few things here, and then I want to kind of get your viewpoint, but I want to come back to that because I had a story yesterday. I was helping a company hire a VP marketing,
Mhm.
and I saw the person as just a world-class star. The recruiter who's actually, and I was only coaching the hiring team and looking at some candidates the recruiter was getting. She said she doesn't match the skills. This was a woman, black woman, uh, achieved a lot, 30 years old, was running a division for Amazon. I could just see, and it was in marketing. You could just see she was a natural. I mean, she had an MBA at UNC North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And she wouldn't have even got this job unless she was good. And then she took a job she's never had before and made a $50 million business out of it. I said, this woman's remarkable. You can get her. I don't know if you can get her, but she's great. The recruiter said, no, she's not good enough because she doesn't box check these skills. But I think, so that was when you said that point, I said, gosh, this is, as I don't think
Well, good recruiters,
recognize talent.
You know this better than I do, but what this guy taught me was that good recruiters know the company really well, and they know the hiring manager or the hiring organization really well. So they have a sixth sense of fit for a lot of critical jobs that the data and the systems may not necessarily understand. That was sort of what I took away from the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to have I'm going to show you our competency model, which is being a recruiter, which is totally different than what I expected to say here.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think we're on live, Brian, because I haven't seen a single comment come through. But we are
I don't see the
recording
link. I don't see it either.
Huh?
Yeah, we have several comments coming through, Louis. So you are live on
Okay,
LinkedIn.
then
Yep.
they're just not coming through here. I probably didn't
Yep.
connect it. That's probably what it is then. Okay, so let's kind of go back to the original theme, but then we'll get back. I think we're going to have another project, Josh, maybe two that bring you in here. So here's the idea. So I'm going to just go back when I became a recruiter in 1978, and I had already been in industry for 10 years. I never used a job description. I always asked the hiring manager, hey, tell me about the work.
Yeah.
But so then we've created, and I'm going to call this is the end game and the initiative I'm trying to push out. I've been pushing on this cloud for 22 years. I don't have 22 years left in this industry. I think there is a solution. So the reason we're creating this diversity hiring by design program, you're part of that program. This is kind of an introduction to it. I make the statement that you have to, as a minimum, you have to hire for the anniversary date, not the start date. Meaning at year one, the candidate says, I'm glad I took this job. And the hiring manager says, I'm glad I hired that person. That's a whole different, just focusing on after the person's on board and at least demonstrated his or her competency, then you make the decision. So this is the idea. First off, I've got some ideas on how to do that. Why don't you just kind of take that theme, Josh, if that was the game plan, what would you have to do to achieve it? Diversity or not, just hiring a great person for the hire, because I think that's the first step.
That's a really good concept. I think what you would have to do, I haven't thought about it a lot yet, but let me sort of think of quickly. I think what you would have to do is study, in a sense, what the successful people in this role do and look like and behave like in their second and third year, what they have been through to get through the successful situation they're in, what skills they needed to become successful at that job, and sort of their archetype of why they succeeded, and then decompose that and say, aha, these are the types of skills, capabilities, experiences, cultural attributes we need in people to become this in this sort of success pattern. So, I think all of those things, I think that's a very important way to do it. And I think that's sort of maybe what the guy from Halliburton was kind of getting at is in a lot of companies. And I kind of learned this when I was at Deloitte, the job as it's written down looks understandable, but the actual work that happens in the company is different. The way people behave, the way the systems work, the way decisions are made. And by studying somebody who's been successful for 2 or 3 years, and then asking them, looking back, what were the things you wish you knew when you started? I think you'd be much, much better at selecting candidates.
Okay, so I'm going to go through some things that I believe to be true. This is my micro
Yeah,
perspective.
no, I'm interested to see this.
Doing 100, maybe 1,000 times, but
Yeah.
but it's not scalable. That's the problem. The idea is
Okay.
this works when you put a lot of emphasis on it, but what I call the big and essential changes. The first one, and this is diverse talent or high potential talent, top 25% talent, is the demand for these people is always high. Everybody wants to hire great people.
Yeah.
But you can't expect those people to go through a weed out the week process. You got to nurture them. You got to proactively find them. You got to convince them. The recruiter and the hiring manager have to work in tandem. So it's got to be an attract in process. Like, hey, Josh, would be open to explore a situation that made good career sense to you. And then it's not just the transaction. It's, hey, let's discuss it. Let's describe the job. Let's understand your needs. Let's understand our needs. Let's see if we can put a package together. So our whole focus is, hey, let's spend more time with fewer people, but attract them in. So that's at the strategy level. It's don't weed out people, attract them in. So to my mind, technology, the best technology can do is hire the best of the bottom half who's willing to go through endure the apply process. That's the strategy session. Your take on that one?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's, like I said, there's got to be a magnet on both sides. There has to be an attraction of the organization to the person, and the person has to be attracted to the organization. It has to go both ways. I mean, I guess supposedly those two magnets would repel, but that's the right analogy. So if you can't as a recruiter, say, if you can't have a relationship with somebody where you sense that they are feeling that this is the right role for them, and they're coming to the conclusion that it'll be a good career situation for them over time, and they're willing to put their energy, time, and effort into going through the recruiting process, then you're kind of wasting your time. It's sort of like in sales. I mean, I learned this in sales, having been in sales many, many years. You can't force somebody to buy something. You can, unless they want to buy it, they're not going to buy it. So you have to reach some situation through your own conversation or presentations or business case where they reach the conclusion, yeah, I need that. That is the right solution for me. And I think it's the same situation here. If the candidate doesn't feel like, wow, this is a good thing, I'm willing to give up what I have to do something new, to move, to change, to come work for this organization, to take this job, they're not going to do it. And if they do, if you just throw money at them and say, hey, we're willing to pay you a bunch of bonuses and what, that still may not turn out to be the right decision in the long run, because they could be a bad fit or they could leave. So I totally agree with you.
Well, your point, and this happened last night. So I had a person who had been to one of our recruiter training programs. She said, Lou, I think I'm going to lose a pretty big deal. It was a senior VP operations for a company up in, I think had to be Northern California or Central California. She said the woman had already verbally accepted the job, but 2 days prior to that, she got a call for another job that was bigger, that paid about 35% more. What can I do? This was the recruiter asking me last night. I said, Debbie, I don't know what you can do, but I can't just give you the context. But what I would do is I would start off with this statement is, don't make long-term decisions using short-term data. And she knew, she'd been through training, and our focus is on too many candidates accept jobs on what they get on the start date, not what they're going to be doing and becoming, which is pretty much, and I like your point, Josh, of don't sell something somebody's going to buy. She just got lured by the money. So I just told the person,
well, the thing about money, I've, in my personal experience hiring people in my businesses, people that over rotate towards money, I tend to stay away from, because that means they'll leave if somebody else offers them more money. They have to have something else they're looking for. If that's all they're looking for, maybe in a sales role, it may work out, but those are mercenary types of candidates, and they may not be good long-term hires for most companies anyway. And you have to have a value proposition above money. I mean, you're not going to recruit.
So now let's go back to what you just said there. Is I think this woman got lured. She already went through a lot of work. Like, I'm going to say she probably spent 6 to 8 hours with the company, this woman last night, with the company, understanding the job, what it was going to go in year one and what could happen in year two. But all of a sudden she got lured by the money. And I think candidates have a responsibility too. This win-win hiring says you're going to hire for the first year anniversary date. So what causes people because they don't, and I don't think companies, and this is where I think this is a fundamental problem. I don't think recruiters or companies understand the work that they're going to be doing in year one. So all they do is they emphasize 80% of the decision is, hey, this is a great financial package. The companies get lured into that, candidates get lured into that. So they set the stage for that not to understand what's going to happen. I don't think, and you just said.
Well, the other thing about financial stuff is, there's a certain amount of money people have to make to live. So if you can't pay people that much, you're going to lose them. Above that, their earnings has much more to do with what they're going to learn in this job, who they're going to meet in this job, the kinds of experiences they're going to get. That's going to have much more impact on their long-term earnings than the pay. The pay this year, most people live, look, I'm in my 60s, I don't know how old you are. I'm hoping that I can work another 15 or 20 years at least. So you're going to work a long time. So it's really what you learn and the experiences you have and the kinds of progression you go through that's going to impact your long-term earnings, not the pay right now. So I think recruiters have to be able to sell that story to prevent somebody come along and saying, well, we'll just give you a $10,000 bonus once you come here.
And that's a lot of people make these short-term decisions, and recruiters make this logic of, okay, in fact, recruiters actually filter candidates on the compensation. Hey, Josh, what do you want? Well, now you're making too much. If I don't know what you're making, I can't even push you forward. And they actually filter candidates on the compensation before they can even know.
I can see why you do that as a recruiter. But, there's another thing that I've learned over the years. In most of the industries that I've studied, there are high-paid companies. There are companies that pay above average, and there are companies that pay below average. The companies that pay above average usually are hard places to work. I mean, they don't pay above average just because they feel like it. It's because they are very demanding companies. Sometimes they're difficult places to work. And some people love that and some people don't. So there's a factor there of, yeah, maybe you want to make all this money, but are you willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week and deal with the stress? Because that's what it's going to be like.
That's no question.
Not
let's go
everybody
through.
wants that kind of life.
Okay, let's do this. I've got 6 other things I want to chat with about. Maybe we'll get through 2 or 3, but I want to ask JJ, any questions coming in that you think are relevant for Josh or I? Well, let's make them for Josh.
Well, one of the questions that we're getting a little bit frequently is overall, how do you think that COVID-19 now and in the future is going to affect this recruitment process, both in the way you hire and who you hire and how you hire them?
Well, I'll give you my perspectives on that. First of all, a lot more of it's virtual, obviously. So there's much more, you have to be much more familiar with doing things over the phone and over video and, getting access to data like that. The second is, candidates, it depends on the role. Candidates are as sensitive to the experience as ever. The candidate experience, the recruiting experience, the amount of information they get, the feedback, the follow-up, and so forth. And the third is, I think most people are a little nervous about their lives, about their families, about their health. They want to know, are you a good company? Are you going to take care of me? Is this going to be a safe position? Is there support for my family? I think you're going to hear more of that right now than you probably would normally in a typical economic time like we had in January. So those definitely are big factors. And then depending on the industry you're in, you might be an industry where there's a lot of candidates available, and you might be an industry where it's really, really hard to hire them. So I don't know that that's common from industry to industry, but those are the things that I've heard a lot about.
Yeah, and I would say, well, certainly going to be the video interviews. So just for everyone who's on here who's a job seeker, or even if you're a recruiter or hiring manager, at www.winwinhiring.com, we have a free course for job seekers on what they have to do. And it relates to how you interview in person or on the phone. Over the years, I always prep my candidates because I wasn't comfortable that my hiring managers were good interviewers. So once I found a candidate I thought was pretty good, I made sure that they were interviewed properly. So if you're a job seeker, take that class. It's free for 30 days or so. It's only $5 after that, but that's, you don't abuse it. But nonetheless, take that course. That will help you at least understand how do you ask questions, how do you answer questions, and how you do them on video, which is real critical. I want to get back to this. So let me find.
One more
there.
thing on the COVID thing. I think it's also really a good opportunity for anybody in the recruiting side to ask people, the candidates, what is your personal goal in your career right now? Because I think people are taking a lot of short-term, they're trying to solve a lot of short-term problems. Sometimes people might just want more money because they need it. So it's a particularly acute time in people's lives. So you get to ask those kinds of questions right now that you might not normally get people to talk about.
Yeah, that's a real good point. Is I think there is a lot of short term. Hey, I got to lower my Maslowian need to make the payments. Okay, I want to go back to this desire of why we haven't changed, and this goes back to your first, because you've been around. How many years you've been in this industry?
About 25
Josh?
years, something
25.
like that.
So you're
Yeah.
right there at the cusp of this.
Yeah.
And here's what my contention is that I think we've optimized the steps, not the system. Meaning we have a hiring system that starts with a job spec, how we source, how we interview, how we close, how we onboard, how we manage people. And all technology is optimizing one of those steps. And I'm going to contend optimizing a step means that's not the point. You got to optimize the system. And in my mind, the system is they want to have a great candidate. So how do you get great candidates at the top of the funnel? How do you get them hired? How do you manage them? And to me, optimizing one single step means you might exclude the best candidates from consideration. So that to me is one of the reasons why I don't think people in the technology space, in the hiring process design space, and I'm thinking that's one of the reasons why we haven't solved the problem yet. What's your take on that?
Well, no, absolutely. The talent acquisition problem as a whole, if you were the head of talent acquisition for any company, is a systemic problem. It's, who are the types or characteristics of people that are going to be most successful? What are the different families or roles that we're going to have to recruit in? What cities? And then how many internal candidates do we want to bring into those roles too? I mean, one of the really hot topics in HR right now is internal mobility. And, because so many companies are going through massive transformations and downsizing and upsizing and moving people into new situations. So that is the talent acquisition problem, is understanding that system. The steps are constantly getting automated at different rates of speed. And I actually think it's a little bit like the learning industry. You kind of have to have an architectural view that say, we've got some tools over here that do this. We've got some tools that do this. We've got tools to do this. And we replace them over time. Some of them work great. Some of them don't. Some of them we keep for a long time. Some of them don't last very long. But the system has to be clear. And so you can call that system or strategy or overall process, but I couldn't agree more. And by the way, this is why I think sometimes people outsource recruiting, is they're working on the little pieces and they don't have a systemic view, and they think, let's just get somebody else to do it for us because we don't really understand this.
Okay, I'm going to let me see if I can get through this next one here. This one. So this is at the beginning. So I'm just going to give you a story, which I haven't violated, but my first job, my first search project was for a plant manager making automotive components. I knew the president of the company. I'd already been in manufacturing. So president had a rough job description, 10 years of this, 5 years of manufacturing in this. And I said, Mike, that's not a job description. That's a person description. Because a person doesn't have skills and a job doesn't have that, a person has that. Let's put the person description in the parking lot. What does a person need to do? And I knew the guy. He said, he's got to turn around the plant. I said, let's walk through the plant. And we found 5 or 6 things. The labor performance was terrible. The logistics were terrible. The machining and the manufacturing process was terrible. The yield was low. I said, okay, we'll find someone to fix all of that. I've been very comfortable in manufacturing, so it was easy to do. I have never used a job description that listed skills before. I always ask the hiring manager, what does this person need to do to be successful in the first year? That's 5, and it's always 5 or 6 KPOs, key performance objectives, or OKRs, objectives and key results. Define the task, define the action, define some result, and then tell me about the culture and the resources. So that was it. To me, if you don't do that, to me, that's the foundation of this whole thing. You can't hire for success. You can't be a good recruiter unless you know that stuff. What's your take on that concept? But to me, this is the foundation.
No, absolutely. No, and I totally agree. And I think if you have that conversation with the hiring manager or the business leader, you're actually doing them a big favor because you're teaching them how to be a better leader. I do think a lot of managers and supervisors and leaders, particularly if they're new to this whole, management world, think, oh, well, let's hire somebody who knows how to do this. Let's hire somebody who's had experience in that. And they don't realize that that's a very small part of the candidate fit. So I think having that kind of a conversation, it probably might be uncomfortable for some of the business people to have with a recruiter, but I think it's a really important conversation to have, because, you know, if the hiring manager continues to focus on these very small skill areas, and the recruiter says, okay, well, here's a guy or gal who can do that, and then they come back and say, wait a minute, 6 months later, that guy didn't work out. What happened? Well, I told you, you weren't clear with me on the objectives.
Well, let's go back to your other point about the internal mobility and the diversity on this.
Yeah.
I contend we promote people internally based on their past performance. We hire people who are strangers based on their skills and personality in the interview. And those are two fundamental different decision criteria. And to me, if you don't, so that's my first take.
Well, skills, you know, I've been doing so much stuff on skills, I'm getting a headache from it, but skills are a piece of your career for all of us. Everybody needs skills in something, but you know, you learn a lot of things on the job too. So how much are you going to know? You go to a new company in a new industry, there's a lot of things you're not going to know unless you've worked in that industry or that company before. So skills are going to take you to a certain degree. And I think the critical this conversation between the hiring manager and the recruiter is, what are the skills that this person must have to be successful? And what are the skills they can learn here? And that goes for internal and external. Internal candidates, there's also a much more of a bet on the potential of this person. And you get an added value of saying this person knows the company, they know the culture, they have a lot of relationships, they know our systems, they're not going to be a surprise. We know they're ethical and honest. I mean, there's a lot of things an internal candidate has that are sort of added benefits that counteract the fact that maybe they haven't done this job before, but you know, that's okay because we're going to use them internally anyway, because that's the way we run the company. So that's
what I tell hiring managers. I said, what's the must have? And then I asked the hiring manager, okay, what does that look like on the job? What does that look? What do they have to do with that skill on the job?
Right.
And then it's not 5 or 10 years experience. Okay, they've got to be a great programmer. Okay, how are they going to use those programs? What are they going to do? Okay,
actually, let me tell you a funny story on this success thing. One of the companies I did some work with a couple of years ago was a big bank in the East Coast, and they were trying to hire a bunch of software engineers for cloud stuff and cybersecurity and everything. And there's, you know, there's like 5 times as many cybersecurity jobs as there are people. And they found out that hiring people with those skills was 6 times more expensive than recruiting them internally. 6 times. By the time they paid for recruiters, bonuses, the retention rate, and the high salaries they had to pay. Ultimately, it took a year to build those skills internally, but they after several years of doing this, determined that internal candidates that were close enough in the skill set that they could learn how to do the job were 1/6 the cost. So they really complemented their talent acquisition a lot with the internal mobility and internal education stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, somebody, and I was talking about soft skills in some post, or I don't know, that could have been on this Daily Show, where a woman said, people get hired for their skills, but fired for their lack of soft skills, which are organization, management, team, getting stuff done, learning on the job. And to me, that's the narrow-mindedness. So let me ask you this: why don't recruiters know that? I mean, this is not what we're talking about here, Josh, is common sense to me. And I think, so I'm going to make the statement is recruiters are afraid or they don't know the work. And I don't think if you're not a good understanding of the job as a recruiter, you can't convince a top person to take that job. And the recruiter.
Well, I mean, actually, I don't know. Let me ask you a question. I have a feeling a lot of recruiters are paid based on volume and speed. So maybe they don't feel that their job is to dig into some of these more difficult issues, and they're just in a hurry. I don't know.
I think you're 100% right. And let me say this: my whole philosophy here was not altruism. One of my clients said, "Lou, I'll give you all my business." This was when I was a contingency recruiter in the mid '80s. If you get me a 1-year guarantee. I said, "What?" I said, so I decided, okay, that's a pretty good deal. I mean, but the bad part is, as a recruiter, I was focused on hiring for a year. So I didn't give the money back or lose another search. And that got me real honest. It wasn't altruism. It was business. So I really said, okay, I better understand the job. I better understand the culture. I better understand the hiring manager. I mean, it was hard work to do that, but then things became clear of what had to happen. And convincing a candidate this was a good job, if they were good, I had to be honest with them. I screwed one candidate up. I screwed in 1984. And I mean, literally for a month or for 6 years, I woke up in a cold sweat because I convinced the person to take the job that he shouldn't have taken. I've never done it since. I haven't.
I wonder, I'm not a recruiter, but I wonder if one of the things for recruiters to think about is, imagine you are the hiring manager and you have to live with this person for the next 5 years. Is this a person you think you would hire?
I'll go 2 years, but 5.
2 years.
Okay, so JJ or Brian, any questions that are related to this? Topic we have? Yeah.
We do actually have a great question from one of our LinkedIn attendees regarding this, a little bit more pinpointed though, because job descriptions are usually dreamed up by somebody who thinks what the job should be. Recruiters usually interview around some kind of quantifiable traits, but then your operational verticals need something else entirely. So how can you align those three segments along with the current org culture and climate to hire one of those great candidates that's going to be a long-term success?
Good. You could have asked a more complicated question.
I'll do my best next.
That's a 4-hour answer. Josh, I got an answer for that, but God, I don't have time. What's your immediate take at the concept
I think it's
level?
number 3. I think you've kind of sort of written it down here. If you can't define what success looks like in the job description is just a bunch of words. And somebody dreamed up some. The other thing about the job description, it is an opportunity for you to be biased. You can say, I want somebody who went to Cornell or Stanford, or I want somebody that worked at this company or this company. And those are all biased
Right.
criteria. So, I think the more outcome-oriented, experiential-oriented job descriptions and by the way, there's a difference between the job description and the job posting, is better.
Yeah, one's a marketing document, one's internal. But here's what I said. So this was the search yesterday. So we'll bring this back. This is the one with the VP marketing. When I met with the chairman and the president, we defined the jobs of VP marketing, and clearly was the person to increase market share by 50% was the top line over the next 3 years. Part of that was developing a whole demand generation capability, and another part of it was converting great leads into closable business. So the person really had hand, and that was basically the job. And I had worked with this company before. They were at YPO, so I kind of knew the sense of the job and the culture, and they really do have a tremendous opportunity. The recruiter, she had never been working with the company. She had that in her mind. So when I saw this other candidate who was a diverse candidate, I just did a simple search on LinkedIn Recruiter, found this person. She was remarkable. Had never done that. And I don't think the recruiter even understood how to box check or even handle the question on performance. And that was what I would call, you got to be qualified to do that. And number 2, this woman, I could just see she was a superstar. I mean, you don't get to be 30 years old running a business for Amazon unless you're a remarkable person.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know that she's the right person, but I'm going to recruit her. My sense was, so it's that level of understanding of, if you don't know the job, you're not even in the game. If you're box checking skills, you're basically hiring people for day one. If you understand the job, you're really hiring people who are good, at least the top quartile for year 1 and beyond. If you can find some superstars, you're going to find a true leader in a company. And I think,
I wonder if, and this is sort of going back to that Halliburton story, but I wonder if one of the things that we're saying is that recruiters need to interview the hiring manager in great detail before they start talking to candidates. They really need to know the job and the company and the roles.
And why aren't recruiters?
I don't know if recruiters do enough of that.
I don't. I talk to recruiters every day. Some of them are really good at it. I have a reputation for being pretty aggressive and in your face. And I tell people who go to the training, my style is not appropriate. I grew up in manufacturing in a union environment, and so totally unrelated. But the idea is you have to be pushy enough to challenge a hiring manager. And I don't think they have that.
I think that's true. I think good recruiting professionals intimidate and challenge and might, sort of throw hiring managers off base because they ask them difficult questions that they maybe haven't thought about enough. And that's a good thing, because, as a manager, you're so busy doing your job and running the whatever it is you're doing, you're not thinking about the key success factors all day. You're just implicit. So I think that's a consultative role that recruiters have to play.
I think we got to take that clip that Josh just said. I think every recruiter role has to hear that. And I think they're afraid. I think they're intimidated. I think candidates or recruiters are designed, oh, I'm just filling jobs. I got to box check this. And we talked to a big company yesterday, and she said she's had 84 recruiters, but they got too many recs to handle. So that's another problem. That's the system. Hey, if you want your recruiters to hire great people.
I remember when I was running our research company, we had to hire a VP of engineering. I won't mention the people's names. And it was really hard. We didn't have a bunch of stock options. We didn't have that much money. We had a great job, but not a lot of sort of benefits. We're in the San Francisco Bay Area competing with all these tech companies. I found this recruiter that we worked with, and we paid him a lot of money. And he actually got on a plane, flew out, came to our office, and interviewed us. And I thought, what is he doing? And he came back to me and he said, all right, I got what you guys are all about now. You're going to need somebody who wants this. You're going to need somebody that, and I won't go through the details.
Yeah.
And he went out and found us an incredible guy who worked for us for 10 years. He gave up a job at Google or one of those tech companies to come work for this little startup thing we were doing, and had a great time at it and really thrived. And then, went off and did some cool things at Deloitte after that. So he, that particular recruiter was very, very savvy, and he really got to know us.
Yeah, people think we overpay recruiters. No, you hire a great person, the recruiter got.
Oh yeah, it was worth every penny.
Right. I think that's the thing. I think people think, oh, I'm going to save all this money, not use a recruiter. Here's one that I go, but I call it fish with the biggest and most diverse fish. This is diversity hiring by design. It's you got to pre-identify great people. They're probably not looking, and you got to work your heart out to find them and bring them in. So just got maybe your little story, what you're just a VP engineer. That person didn't apply to a job. So this is another concept that I think recruiters think sourcing is the game. My mind is, you got to source and recruit together. They're not separate. You can't separate the two. You got to identify people, work your heart out to get them in, and you got to work just as hard on the hiring manager side to bring this, to bridge the gap here. You're taking
isn't one of the, Lou, I mean, this is a question for you. Isn't one of the characteristics of a great recruiter is that you're really interested in people and you like to get to know people? Because you have to build a network either for one search or for generally. You have to get to know a lot of people, and you have to be interested in them and understand their strengths and weaknesses if you want to be certainly for higher level roles. And that curiosity about people means you have to deal with, many, many different types of people. And, study after study has shown that, diversity creates better performance. So I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, I think the issue is that and I tell recruiters, you're changing people's lives. Number one, the hiring manager, which is one dimension, but more importantly is that candidate. And if you don't know the job, if you're just trying to close for day one, not the year one or beyond, you're affecting a person's life. And that's why I said the story of I screwed somebody up. I wanted the fee. I convinced a person to take this job. I knew it wasn't the right job for him. And within 7 months, he was gone. And I felt miserable for 6 years till the guy called me up and said, Lou, I became a VP finance of a company. We did some work with him. I said, oh, thank God. I didn't even want to talk to him, didn't want to think about it. I just knew I was doing it for the fee. And I think your point about recruiters are hired to place people fast and at low cost. I don't think those are the right metrics. I think it should be quality of hire, and they should be judged just like hiring manager judges. Hey, after a year, did you do a good job? I don't know that can ever be accomplished. So, I mean, it's just as a design process.
I think good companies do it well. And they also, it isn't, the other thing on the volume thing, in most business situations, the number of people is less important than the productivity of the people. Hiring more people with lower productivity is much, much less financially successful than hire fewer people with higher productivity. So if you're in a numbers game of more and more and more and more and more and more, you may have over-rotated in that direction regardless of the job, although a lot of times it is a numbers game.
I mean, I look at these 5 things. So let me just put the other ones down because we only have a few more minutes. So 5 is, we've already kind of talked about. 5 is, I don't think hiring managers are measured on their success as hiring managers and hiring and developing people. And I think hiring managers don't know how to do it. They're biased. So I said, hey, maybe you got to change how hiring managers make the decision. Amazon's bar raiser is one. I think somebody else has got to intervene. What's your take on that from the hiring manager perspective? Are they really competent to hire people, and why aren't they? And should they be rewarded somehow or measured somehow?
Well, this gets to the issue. I was just on the phone with somebody about this. This gets to the issue of how did the company select this person to be a manager, and why is he or she a manager, and are they ready for that role? And as a recruiter, you've probably seen a lot of hiring managers in your life, and you see good ones and ones that aren't very good at it. And I think, if the hiring manager doesn't seem to understand these issues, it gets back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. The recruiter should make them a little uncomfortable and say, are you really sure that's the way you want to hire these people? Is this going to work out for you and your role? Is this going to make you successful as a team leader or as an executive or whatever it is? Because people have different levels of experience in hiring and different perspectives on hiring. It's not a science. I suppose there is science behind it, but everybody comes at it with a different perspective. For example, I'm in a stage in my career where I'm not hiring anybody that I don't enjoy being with. That's it. Now that's because of where I am in my life.
You're never going to hire me then, Josh. I guess.
No, it's sort of like, that's just where I am with my life. If I worked for a big
yeah.
company, I wouldn't be able to quite say it that way. It wouldn't be quite that simple.
No, I agree with you. JJ, let's take 1 or 2 more questions. I tend to like to make these 50 minutes or so we got time for 1 or 2 more questions and a quick summary. JJ, anything just stands out that you feel is very relevant?
Yeah, we do have 2 very good questions I would love to get to. When you're talking about diversity hiring, can you define diversity? Is it only the protected classes, or does the definition go beyond that? And then secondly, same question, second part, what is the best way, or do you have any suggestions about how to reach out to those protected classes or those diverse candidates?
Okay, I'm going to just show you this. I want to just see if I have this here. So I don't know that I do. So here's my definition of diversity. Everybody who can do the work. I don't care if they're black or white, old or young, physically challenged or not, gay or not, old, physical, it doesn't matter. So that's what I call diversity. It's somebody who doesn't meet the skill set, who went to Cornell or 5 years of this or 6 years of that. It's if they can do the work. And that's why I say, if you define the work as a series of performance objectives, your job is, hey, if they can do that work, they deserve the job. And I had David Goldstein, who will be on, I think, the show 2 weeks from now, is the co-chair of the OFC CP practice at Littler Mendelsohn. He said that's more objective than a traditional skills-based job description. And so that's my definition. What's your take on that whole concept there, Josh?
Well, yes, absolutely. There's many dimensions to diversity, but I think the more challenging part of it is if you as a recruiter are given a job, we need to hire a diverse slate, but the company isn't diverse. Well, if everybody in the company is a white male above the age of 45 or whatever it is, and they say, go find us somebody who's an African-American, who's a female, you're going to have a really hard job. So you have to sort of tune your diversity efforts to the level of diversity that the company actually is willing to and able to assimilate. Diversity doesn't start with recruiting. It has to be systemic across the whole company. Recruiting is a part of it, but if diverse candidates don't get promoted, if diverse candidates don't get treated well, if they come in to interview and they don't see anybody that even looks like them there, you're not going to have a lot of success at it. So I think we are, as recruiters, at one end of it, but I would make sure that you're really recruiting the type of diversity that the company really will sort of absorb and really will fit into the organization. If you have a highly diverse company that's been doing this for a long time, it's not going to be hard to recruit diverse candidates, because the candidates are going to say, wow, that's the kind of place I want to be.
Okay, so let's assume there's a company that's starting it and somewhat successful. I want to go back to the first thing I said here is I showed that little cartoon of the bucket. Why is this so hard? why haven't we achieved this yet? We've spent tens of billions of dollars. You probably know the actual number what companies have spent on technology and
Well,
investment in HR, and they
I
haven't
tell you,
got there yet.
I have a conceptual idea. You know, if you think about sales, if you have a product that's hard to sell and it's not well positioned in the market and you're not sure you're priced it correctly, and you throw it over to the salespeople and say, go sell this, they're going to have a really hard time selling it. You could pay them a lot of money and they might sell it, but it's going to be hard for them. On the other hand, if you have a very clear picture of your market, you know how your product is used, it's well priced, it's well positioned, the salespeople are going to have a wonderful time. The same thing's true in recruiting. If the company doesn't know the type of people they want to hire and why and what their careers are going to be like and what the value proposition is and how much we're going to invest in them, the recruiters can't do all that. They can communicate, they have to communicate a great value proposition. So I think one of the reasons that maybe the recruiting industry sometimes feels like it's not optimized is we're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing on recruiters when maybe some of the issues are really the hiring managers, the company, the culture, the strategy. We're not clear on what the job really is. The job keeps changing. So that's why I think recruiters need to be willing to push back and be more integrated into the bigger strategy, because once those issues are clear, candidates come and they're much easier to recruit. So you know, that's maybe a little high level perspective.
No, I think you're right. And that's why I go back to the point. I learned this as one of my first jobs was a financial analyst for a major corporation. I was sitting in the boardroom flipping slides. Oh, I was 25 or 26. And all I had to do was flip slides where the group president was talking to the chairman and other people of the big company. And the CFO said to the group president, he said, strategy drives tactics. I hate your tactics. So come back with the right. I don't care. No, he said, how good your tactics are don't matter. I think your strategy sucks. And I don't think companies have a good talent strategy because recruiters can't push on a cloud.
That's right.
I think that's why I go back. You have to have a company-wide strategy where everyone does these things.
Exactly. That's exactly.
So final words, Josh, we're done. I appreciate it. Hope we get you on the a couple other times here in the future, but nonetheless, what would your final statement to be if you're just whatever you want to say?
I think for those of you that are recruiters that are watching this, don't underestimate the strategic value of your role. Push back, ask questions, spend some time with the hiring managers. Working with the candidates is obviously part of your job. That's a major part of it, but make sure you really are adding value on both sides of the equation. And I think you'll be much more successful.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
We're done with LinkedIn Live. See you next week. We have Kevin Parker, who's the CEO of HireVue, and keep up with it. Thank you very much, Josh. That was great. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Josh.
Okay.